Banana Twist, Chapter 4, The Banana Boy. That next week I worked out a pretty foolproof system for keeping out of Goober's way, or keeping him out of mine. I never left our apartment without first making sure he wasn't in the hall. Then I'd rush for the stairs. That way he couldn't find me standing there waiting for the elevator. I'd sneak down the stairs to the next floor or the next. Then I'd go to the elevator and press the down button, watching the elevator indicator to make sure the elevator didn't stop at 14, 13, on the way to get me. That way I knew it would be safe to get on without running into him. It worked. Luck was on my side, I thought. Then one day, I was standing there on 12, watching the elevator indicator, when suddenly the stairway door opened and Goober peered out at me. "I knew I'd find you eventually, on one floor or another," he said. "I thought you lived on 19. See how well I had him figured? He had watched to see what floor I'd get off on. I tried to keep my sigh from showing. It was like trying to smother a sneeze. "I live on 13, actually," I said. "Everybody thinks there's no 13, but there is, and that's where the janitor's apartment is. You can't get to it on the elevator or on this stairway. There's a special stairway that not everybody knows about. What I wanted to ask you was if you could—" Goober started to interrupt. I knew he was going to ask me some dumb favor, so I kept talking. "The way you get to the special stairway is that in one of these apartments on 12 is this one door that looks like a closet door, but it's really the door to the stairway to 13 where we live." "Since you're not doing anything right now, maybe you could—" interrupted Goober. "The reason we have to keep it so secret," I went on, "is that otherwise everybody would be knocking on our door all the time, asking my father to fix their faucets or their window shades or their doorknobs or something. We wouldn't have any privacy at all. And we're a family that loves our privacy, and—" "Hey," Goober said, interrupting fast to keep me from interrupting him again. "Want to come up and help me move my aquarium? It takes two. Otherwise, I'll have to drain the whole thing and transfer the fish and everything, and it would take hours." See, I was right. He had wanted to ask me some dumb favor. He didn't even know me, and here he was already asking me to help move his old aquarium. "Why can't you just leave it where it is?" I asked. "Because it's right next to the air conditioner, and the fish will catch cold. They might even get pneumonia." Goober screwed his face around to one of his odd and anxious expressions. "I'm not all that strong," I said, stalling for time, trying to think up excuses. "I might drop it or something." "We could have a banana split afterwards," he said cagily. I considered. I hadn't had much breakfast. I'm not a big breakfast eater, and the banana split sounded pretty good. "Is your father home?" I asked. I didn't want to meet his father. One Goober was enough. "Nobody's home. Dad's at the office, my mother's at the optometrist, and I've got to get the aquarium moved right away. Come on, we've got to hurry." "Why don't you shut off the air conditioner?" I asked, knowing that I was fighting a losing battle. "I'm allergic to warm weather," he said, starting to wheeze and cough to show me how sickly he was. I decided it probably wouldn't kill me to give him a hand with the aquarium, seeing that he really liked those goopy fish of his. And I could use the banana split. So I followed him up the stairs to 14, 13, and into his apartment. The same stuff was all over the place. The papers and books on the dining room table, and the boxes on the living room furniture. Or maybe it was different books in different boxes. Anyway, it looked pretty much the same. I followed Goober into his room. It had to be his room. There was a big aquarium on one shelf, an unmade bed, and a pile of clothes everywhere. That made me like him better. I thought he'd be one of those super neat guys that are a pain in the neck. Goober was certainly a pain in the neck, but at least he was messy. That was something on his side. He had it worked out ahead of time how we were going to move the aquarium. He'd already put tables between where the aquarium was and where it was going to be, so we could set it down 3 different times. We moved it to the first table. It was pretty heavy, and the water started sloshing around. "Maybe they'll get seasick," I said. "Then they'll throw up. Maybe we should leave it where it was." "If you have to throw up," said Goober anxiously, "try to wait until after we get the aquarium moved." Goober heard only about 1 word in 10, unless it was his own voice. After we got the aquarium as far as the third table, Goober leaned over to examine it. "Too much stress here at the seam," he announced. "Got to get some putty or we'll have a leak on our hands." He started running around the room, banging doors open and shut. And finally he said, "I've got to run over to the pet shop for some putty. I'll be right back." He zoomed out of the apartment, slamming the door behind him. I watched the fish for a while, but that wasn't very exciting, so I wandered around Goober's room, and that wasn't very exciting either. A messy room isn't all that great to wander around in, especially if it's a pretty small room. So I went into the living room and wandered around in there, waiting for Goober to come back with the putty. I could have been working on the questionnaire or watching television. After about 10 hours, I heard someone knocking at the apartment door. I knew it must be Goober and that he'd forgotten his key. I opened the door, and this tall, thin lady wearing big, dark glasses walked in. "I couldn't even find the keyhole, darling," she said. "Absolutely ghastly drops in my eyes, plus these wicked glasses. I can't see a thing. I told him I didn't want drops." She walked into the living room. "Find me my wet coat, there's a love. No telling what I might end up with, since I'm practically blind as a bat. Dearest boy, blind as a bat. And I'm having lunch at Helen Barsley's. Her apartment is always 10 degrees below freezing. No wonder she's always coming down with colds. She lives in the Arctic zone. Why I said I'd go, I can't fathom. The white coat, darling, in the closet." I picked out a white coat from the hall closet and handed it to her. "By the way, dearest boy," she said, "your father told me about your friend the janitor's son, the banana boy. Really, darling, I wouldn't encourage that friendship if I were you. He sounds as if he'd be a very, very unhealthy influence. Just because you feel sorry for someone, that doesn't mean you have to have him for a friend. I'm sure there are many, many nice boys in this building with whom you would have much, much more in common. Boys who share your own background, your own ideals, darling. This boy sounds very, very odd." She threw the coat over her shoulders like a cape. "I absolutely dread Helen Barsley's luncheons. She always has creamed things on toast. Soft little mysterious things, very, very difficult to identify. The most dreadful possibilities come into your mind as you're swallowing them." She smiled in my direction as she opened the door. "Be sure to eat now, dearest love." I hate people who criticize other people's mothers, so I won't say anything. But I was really glad she wasn't my mother. I meandered around some more, looking at the paintings on the walls, all very modern, the kind you think you could do yourself if you wanted to. And finally Goober came back with the stuff for the aquarium, and then finally we had the thing moved to where he wanted it. I had really earned that banana split. While we were making them, Goober asked, "How many brothers and sisters did you say you have?" "9, I said. "There are 10 counting me, so that means I've got 9 siblings. Siblings means brothers or sisters." "I know," said Goober. "I would have used that word to begin with if I thought you'd understand it. That's pretty good for your age." He scrunched his face into another ugly version of his own. "The reason I ask how many is that when I talked to my father about you, he felt that some of your symptoms might be due to the overcrowded nest syndrome. Insecurity, fighting for attention, the usual manifestation of—" "He's probably right," I said, counting the peanuts on my banana split. 27. We carried our banana splits into the living room and sat on the floor. "Sometimes it takes an outsider to see things objectively. Actually, I feel that I may have helped you," announced Goober, starting to mash up his banana. "You are now able to eat bananas without any qualms at all. When I first met you, remember, you were very nervous about bananas." "Don't think I don't have problems still," I said. "Just because I'm having this banana split right now, in comparative peace and calm, doesn't mean that I'm always that way. I'm suffering inside." "That's very understandable," said Goober, stirring his squashed-up banana. "But now that you understand your problem, you may find it easier to overcome it. Facing yourself is half the battle." Think how old Goober would seem by the time he was 30 or 40 or 50, when he was a little old man now. Looking at Goober, I began thinking about the rest of the Fairleigh questionnaire. What one quality do you look for in a friend beyond all other qualities? Goober had a big mouthful of pulverized banana, in his mouth and on his face. "First of all, a friend should eat with his mouth closed." He started to talk. I looked away. Actually, a lot of your problem stems from the fact that I choose a friend for one reason, that he keep his analysis of my personality problems to himself. I gulped down the rest of my banana split. I had to finish that questionnaire. What if I got it in late just because I couldn't think of anything to say? I hardly watched any TV that night. Just 2 or 3 programs that I couldn't miss. The rest of the time I worked on the questionnaire. What one quality do you look for in a friend beyond all other qualities? I look first of all for sincerity, because if a friend is sincere, he is honest. A true friendship must be an honest one. That one took me forever, and I wrote it about 10 times before I got it right.